The market was going to see me a certain way, and I needed to make sure that, like all good marketing is like, what's the message going to be? Do I lead with an agent message, or do I lead with an investor message? And I made the conscious decision to lead with the agent message first.
Okay.
I call it the like the AI, the agent investor model, as opposed to the investor agent model. So that was important, right?
Hello, everybody. David Donaldson here with another edition and episode of Entrepreneurial Impact. It's really kind of mind-boggling here as we roll into November that I am now, and Joe and I are now north of 25 episodes. What an amazing year it has been. The World Series in the rearview mirror, so I know you guys are all sorry for me. My Philadelphia Phillies dropped the ball, but that's okay because we pick up today with a home run interview with Rob Chavez of CAZA Group. Rob, welcome aboard.
David, thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's really excited. We were touching base earlier, and when I relocated here 10 years ago, when I was on a search for a new market center, as I relocated from Arizona, I met you briefly, right? Because I was doing a lot of investing and fixing, flipping in Arizona. And I remember being incredibly impressed when Mike Coffey introduced us. That's how long ago it's been now. Mike was the TL over at Reston at the time, and introduced us and told me what was going on. And so I knew 10 years ago, here's a guy that's pouring into not just the associates, not just the market center, but the community as a whole through what his knowledge and his resources. How did that come about for you? Where did all this start?
It started.
That was a really deep sigh, by the way.
It is, because it's like, how far back do I want to take you, David? How far back do I want to take you, right? But it started with my dad giving me a book pretty much right when I graduated from college on land development. I don't think I've ever mentioned that to anybody. I've ever verbalized it. Like, that was the first real estate book that I remember reading. And then
what was the book?
I don't, the interesting thing is I don't remember. I don't remember the name. I just remember my dad had given me a book, and I found it interesting because I was a psych major in college, and he was like, real estate's always been kind of good to us. You should maybe read this book on real estate. Now, obviously the book wasn't that great, but it planted a seed, because I then started reading other books. And one of the other books was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, which has influenced a lot of real estate investors. And what's interesting is that that book isn't even about real estate investing, right? That book is about just thinking different, right? Thinking like a business owner. And so, in 1998, I started a recruiting business with my best friend, placing technical salespeople. We went through the dot-com boom. We went through the dot-com bust. Along the way, I'd been buying real estate because I'd been making some money through the dot-com boom, which saved me, honestly, during the bust. Because during the bust, I was telling somebody today, I remember thinking, I was making a lot of money at 25, 26, 27 years old. I remember thinking, if I make half as much as I make today, we'd still be okay. But I ended up making a third, right? With a brand new baby girl and a brand new mortgage during like this real estate tech meltdown. But my real estate friends were still making money. Mortgage people were still making money. And I remember calling them, by the way, and saying, listen, I know you guys are making a lot of cash. Save it, put it away, store it, because it could change. I don't know when it's going to change, but it could change. So anyhow, luckily, I'd been buying some assets along the way. And so if I needed some cash, I'd sell a property. This is like, think about it, 2002, 2003, 2004, right? Yeah. So if I needed some money, real estate was going up, I'd sell a property, which was painful, but I'd sell it because I needed the money, and it would tide me over. And during the course of
Don't look back at what those properties are worth now, Rob. Don't do that.
Believe me, I've done it a million times. It's painful, right? Yeah, I tell everybody today, I owned a single family house in McLean for $325,000. And I remember thinking that was all the money in the world at the time, right? It seemed like so much money. Anyhow, I digress. So what happened was that, though, gave me the bug, right? And I decided that I was going to ask my business partner to buy me out of the recruiting business so that I could pursue real estate full time. This was the summer of 2005, David, right? Now,
Good timing.
good timing. I told my wife, babe, I want to go into real estate full time. But we're going to go through some kind of real estate correction. I know we are. But I believe that if we can survive whatever that looks like, that we're going to come out of the other side stronger, right? That we're going to be well positioned. And
I'll tell you what, that's impressive insight that you knew in 05 when things were still going pretty good, right?
yeah,
I got my license in 07. I didn't have that foresight. I was buying properties in 05 and 06 and 07. Like I got scorched on because I wasn't licensed that I didn't know. So for you to say, hey, I know this is coming, that's pretty impressive.
so this is what happened. It's only because it's not because I was smart and understood the economics or anything. Like I'm like didn't know what the hell was going on, but I understood consumer behavior, right? And it felt like the dot-com boom. It felt like that. And I knew what that was like. And everybody was saying, well, this is the new economy. This is just how it is, right? And it felt crazy as a recruiter. It felt crazy. Like I was placing all these people, making all this money, and it felt like irrational exuberance. And then a year later, it was like somebody had flipped off the switch, just turned it off, right?
Yeah.
I said, babe, it feels like that, right? And in fact, the summer of 05, I had just put a property under contract. I don't think I've told anybody this except for on my team, because I wanted to fix and flip a deal. Like I'd been a buy and hold person, but I wanted to fix and flip. And I talked to a local, guru who, I was like, this deal's kind of skinny, but I'm worried about doing the deal. And he was like, you should do it, right? And I was like, okay. So I got under contract. It was a $10,000 non-refundable, earnest money deposit, and the property needed a lot of work. And then I looked up like a couple weeks later, like before settlement on this thing, and I noticed these properties weren't selling like they were selling before, earlier. Like things were selling like over a weekend before. But now I looked in the MLS and things were on the market for 10 days and 11 days and 14 days. And that was unusual. It's kind of like what we're feeling
Right.
now, right? And
Yeah.
that was unusual, right? And I literally, I got cold feet. I went to the gentleman that I put the property under contract with, and I said, sir, I'm really sorry, but I can't get financing on this property. I know you have a my $10,000 non-refundable deposit. I'm hoping that you will let me out, right? And he looked at me, and he was an older gentleman, probably saw a younger kid that had gone in over his head. And he said, because you're a nice guy, I'll let you out. He said, how much are you willing to pay me to get out, right? And I was like, $300, right? And $300 is a lot of money. I was like, $300, right?
Absolutely.
And so he was like, I'll let you out for $300. So they let me out for $300, okay? And this was in Sterling Park, right?
Yeah.
And that it just fell off a cliff after that. You just started seeing property, like inventory levels start like rising, values started dropping slowly, right? From 2005, 2006, you just saw a little bit. And then 2007, you started seeing like a sizable, right, adjustment. And then 2008, it fell off a cliff. So I might have broken even on that deal because it was still early, but it was like right in the beginning, right? When inventory started just compounding a little, not compounding, that's the wrong word. You just started seeing days on market rising, right? And so what I did was I went to a sub-market that was a couple hours away from where I lived. And and this market never gone through a boom. It hadn't gone through a bust, which is kind of like a stable cash flow market.
Yeah. So you've got a stable community. There you go.
Right. And I just started buying assets there, selling them to investors turnkey, managing those assets. And we call that time, that was like our learning ground. And I was only playing the investment game. I was buying properties for myself, typically small multi. And then I needed cash, like I needed to create 30, 60, 90-day cash for my household. Because nobody told me, I thought I was just going to go buy apartment buildings, and then I was going to live off of the cash flow from those apartment buildings. And I was like, man, I need a lot of these things to make, to essentially like cover my household nut, right? And so I'm like, I need cash now. So I would buy these properties and I would fix them up, and then I would sell them to investors turnkey, and then we manage those properties for them. And then, within a year and a half, we had 300 assets under management, right?
That's an incredible turnaround.
It was crazy, man. 2 hours away from where we lived, right? We'd hired so this was like, when I think about it, this was my first expansion office, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Like, it was 2 hours away from where I lived. We were marketing at the hub level for distressed assets. We hired a crew at the local level that did the day-to-day operation management of that. Yeah. I would visit the area for 2 days out of the time. Then my wife would rotate and visit 2 days at a time. We had a baby girl that we were raising she was 3 years old, right? Chick-fil-A was our office. So I'm making cold calls from Chick-fil-A because she's in the, like the little play area for Chick-fil-A. I'm like waving at her, right? And so we were just trying to figure out a model. We didn't have a model, if that makes sense. Like, we were just grinding. And it's not like I had a mentor to do this. It wasn't until I picked up the book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, David, that I was like, oh, here's a model and here's a framework. And you could take, by the way, the word agent out and replace it with recruiter or whatever, right? And I was like, wow, I don't know who this Gary Keller and Jay Papasang people are, but they're really smart. And I recognized it for what it was. It was a book about business. And so I got my license purely as a way to get referral fees, not ever with the intention of building an agent business. And but I hung my license in that Reston office, and then I proceeded to continue playing the investment game. And little by little, right, my mind started thinking about shifting the model to create my earned income, my 30, 60, 90-day money from the agent side of the business, and taking that money and buying investments. Because after all, the goal was to buy assets that would provide passive income over time. And truthfully, as a wholesaler and a rehabber, one of the things that broke my heart, right, every time was that I would find a really great deal, and then I would either have to wholesale it or I would fix it, flip it, and sell it for cash. And you understand that? Like, you're selling a great asset to take money today.
Because you had that short-term need.
Because I needed that money today. And I was like, that sucks. I don't like, I hate that. Like, couldn't I sell something that I didn't care about? Meaning it was a retail deal. It wasn't like an investment deal, right? And so I remember, like, my first or second listing was helping another developer out of a sticky situation when the market started sliding in 2008. And he had it listed for 1.7 million with like a high profile, like luxury team in the area. And he approached me and said, hey, do you have an agent that might be able to help me sell this? And I said, I've got my license. Why don't I analyze the deal, put my brain on it, and then tell you what you need potentially to do? And luckily, he trusted me. He was somebody that I'd known for a long time. And I said, here's the deal. I think I could sell this in 30 days. This would be the plan, to sell it in 30 days. We have to get ahead of the market. This is why I believe this. And he said, okay. So I listed it, sold the property for 1.6 million, and made a hefty commission. And I said, wait a second. I got to work with somebody that I love, right? Like, he was like a friend of mine, right? I got him out of a difficult situation. Right before he went negative on the deal, by the way, he broke even, but he'd been working on the project for like a year and a half. So it felt like he, lost a lot of time, but, and I made a hefty commission on that sale. And I was like, wow, what if I did more of this, right? Instead of fixing and flipping houses 2 hours away from where I lived in another market where all I was dealing with was death, divorce, drugs, debt, right? And I'd focus on maybe this area, right? Because it's an affluent area, the price point's high, my network has a high price point, and then I'll show my network how to buy and sell like investors do. like be more effective in that. And so that was the genesis of the idea, right?
Okay.
And
You
so
know what I love is that
that's how it started.
normally at this point in time, I'll say, hey, well, no, tell me some about some mistakes you made. I love that you just kind of like jumped into your lessons learned, like right from like, well, let me tell you about how this all kind of cobbled together and came forward for me. Like, that's just awesome, right? The passion and the energy of the why, the how, the challenges associated with that, and an incredibly challenging time. You know, we talk about the impacts of what we've come, and what was great is that you had the foresight. And now, while some of us had lived through the boom because of maybe it was investments or different periods, but you actually worked through it, right? Of the .com and the 90s, right? And then you were kind of bumping up against the real estate boom and bust, right, of the Great Recession. But you were able to work through it. And I actually call it a great time of great education, because I look at those of us that were licensed then and what we were able to accomplish and adapt, because I was an investor as well. That's where I got my start, to learn how to do things and basically retrofit that into hey, there's a different way of doing things and there's a right way of doing things, but as I'm failing my way forward. And that's what I'm hearing a lot from you, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So you've done all that, right? You've done the investment, and then you had your big aha moment, like, wait a minute, the real estate driven side of this,
Sure,
pretty good too, right? And now, but you've taken what you've learned. And so talk to me now about what are the impacts of that period in time to where you are now, because you've obviously got your hands in a lot of things. You've got expansion, you've got your real estate team, you've got grind. So let's kind of digest now that what is really passionate for you and what's driving you to do all these other things that are now impacting other people's lives.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll go back just a little bit, right?
Sure.
I remember making a very conscious decision. Do I want to lead with the investment first model, to like backing into agent deals, or do I want to lead with agent first backing into investment deals? Because it was a turning point. Like I wanted to, like the market was going to see me a certain way, and I needed to make sure that like all good marketing is like, what's the message going to be? Do I lead with an agent message, or do I lead with an investor message? And I made the conscious decision to lead with the agent message first.
Okay.
I call it the AI, the agent investor model, as opposed to the investor agent model. So that was important, right? And so kind of to fast forward, as I went through that journey and continued to buy assets and learn how to run a real estate team, go on the journey of expansion, I realized that I love partnerships. I love building businesses. I am a real estate entrepreneur at heart. And I realized that if you could control the inventory at the top, if you could control listings, if you could control product, right? You could control product as a wholesaler as well. But if you control product as an agent, we are the dot connectors, right? We refer to title, we refer to mortgage, we refer to your home inspector, we refer to insurance, we are the connector, right? And so I remember having a vision in my mind of building a really big lead gen machine, and then being able to refer to these different verticals. At first I was thinking, and then later it became arms of the business, as we started realizing that we had created a model that would allow us to be able to build businesses that all fed kind of like the holding company, right? So today our business is a holding company that essentially helps service 5 real estate teams, a construction practice, an investment arm, grid, right? Which the investment network, and soon to be what I call simply funded, right? So
Simply funded, okay.
Yeah, simply funded, right? Which is going to be our lending arm of the business. And I'm lucky to be in business with all of the people that run those verticals and divisions, right? Some of them I'm 50-50 partner, or I shouldn't say the business, the holding company,
right,
is 50-50 partners with the location leader that's there. Some, we from a corporate perspective own 100% of that business, and the leader that's there growing that business has the ability to become a partner in that business, right? Or start their own like branch of that business, right? So we realized that we wanted to start growing hyper local teams that served the community, and that we could do it through teams and investment and property management and lending and all the rest. So building the ecosystem, which you've seen brokerages do, right? And you see everybody trying to build that ecosystem. We're just kind of building the ecosystem within our world, right?
Right.
And Grid, what's interesting was, why did I pour into the community? Well, Grid was my way of trying to help people navigate all that messiness that I'd gone through early in my career, right?
Yeah.
Where I wish somebody had like said, hey kid, this is what you got to pay attention to right now. And this is where your brain has to be right now. Instead, it was like, I was firing in 17 different directions and doing them all okay, but none incredibly well. And it wasn't until I focused on one thing and got really good at that one thing that allowed me to be able to build other things.
Kind of crazy how we met the guy that has the vision to write all the books about all the things. You just kind of hit the hammer.
I know. So that's it, right? So today, my world is a world where I'm creating business relationships with people that want to build big businesses. Like, we wanted to be able to create a framework that allowed people to build the biggest vision that they had for their life, very similar to what Gary's done within our world. I was like, if the model works, why go reinvent something, right? Like, just do it within our world, right? So it's like a universe within the universe. That makes sense.
No, 100%. We have a lot of those conversations with people, and believe it or not, I was actually having a conversation with somebody who was their own brokerage. And they were just so prideful in the fact that they were the independent brokerage, some of the relationships that they had matter, that it's going to take some time to make them understand that there's value in partnerships through strategic placement and associating yourself with somebody like KW.
Sure.
Versus being an independent. But for some of the historical way of doing business has changed, right? Let me ask you this, having lived through the two different changes that you went through, right? .coms, real estate bubble. And now obviously we're up against a legitimate shift and challenge and change in how we're doing business now. Now I see incredible differences of what it was back then, 07, 08. However, the one thing's fundamentally the same. There's going to have to be a change. There's going to have to be an effort on the agent side to really drive business themselves. What are you doing and what are you seeing that you can share with the rest of the associates that are listening to this and saying, here's where I'm looking right now.
Yeah.
Here's what I see.
Well, David, let me ask you some questions. And
sure.
Let me ask you some questions, right? So
turn the tables on me. Go ahead.
I'm going to turn it, right? Because I think this is a good way to kind of go through this. What pain will sellers experience in the next 6 months, do you think? What pain are they going to experience?
They're going to see the pain of thinking that the house is worth more than it is or was 6 months ago on paper. Right?
Yeah.
They're going to see the time for it change. They're going to see that, hey, I now have to control my asset, improve my asset, invest in my asset, other than just sticking a sign on it. And that pain is both for the sellers and the agents, right?
Yep. So you're right. So education on the listing agent's job, get really good at helping bring reality to the situation, right? Yep. So that's what you said. So an agent's going to have to get good at that, at being empathetic and understanding and being a guide in that process and helping them interpret the data and the numbers. So the skill there has got to go up tremendously, right? Okay, so the number two thing you said is, well, they got to fix up the asset, right? You're right. They're going to have to be competitive. They're going to have to look really good. So we have a renovate now, pay later program that plays really well into that, where we can go, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we have a construction company. We know exactly what things get the highest return without breaking the bank. We're masters at this. We've done it for years. We can implement this program for you. In fact, you don't even need to put the money into it. Like, we'll put our own money into it. And then at settlement, we just get paid from the proceeds, right? So having a program like that can make you strategically stand out from the pack, right? In fact, I got a call yesterday from a client who referred me somebody, but we had done this for a couple of years ago, who referred me somebody who's in the downsizing phase of her life, and she's met with 7 realtors and nobody's offered this kind of solution. And she said, you might want to talk to Rob because this is what Rob and his team does, right? So there's that. Also, I believe that speed and convenience, there's going to be people that are just like, you know what? I want it to happen now. And the iBuying thing has been around for a while now.
Yeah.
But that message is going to resonate with a lot of people. Their house is going to be on the market 30 days, 40 days, 45 days, 50 days, 60 days. Like my agent, like my newer agents can't comprehend that we would be in a listing for 60, 70, 80 days before, right? They're like, they're like losing their mind about what that conversation sounds like, right?
Yeah.
And so one, we're preparing them for how we do that, right? And it's easy. Like we'll just go back to
I tell people that when I first got into business, I would take listings for 6 months. And they don't understand. They're like, what do you mean 6 months? I'm like, well, that was the market. Like you had to understand there was a buyer's market, it was a seller's market, there was a neutral market, and you had to prepare for that. It wasn't a 2-week market.
Yeah, it wasn't a 2-week market. Now, I do know that we can make all of that happen when 30 to 45 days in any market, but the seller has to be willing to do the things, right? And if they're willing to do the things, like we can make it like we can create the outcome that they want within 30 to 45 days, easy, even faster, right?
Well, you hit on the point though, you have to ask the questions to get that out of them, right? That's the educational side for the realtor themselves that have been in business for 2 years or less, or even 5 years or less, in Northern Virginia especially, that don't understand the nuances around what it truly takes to run a business in real estate.
Yeah. And then, you know, that iBuying conversation should be an option in every agent's toolkit, right? So it's scary for agents because they don't understand how that works. I would say get some education around how they can make that work and how they can either leverage an investment network like ours to help them make that work, or maybe they can raise capital to make that work, or even use third-party companies where you sell them, you know, like venture funds that bring them the asset. But the conversation is, you know, David, you know, we love to give our clients choices, right? Some people want maximum value for their home. And what that means is we're going to fix it up and it might take 30, 45, 50, 60 days to get maximum value. Some people want maximum convenience, right? Maximum convenience is all cash offer, close in 2 weeks. You know, most people are kind of like in between, right? Kind of, right? Polish the pen. Which one of these do you lean towards right now? And then what happens is whatever they tell you, you need to have a program to implement that playbook. And that's what we, by the way, that's what we've always done, right? But now this market is built for it, right? I'm just getting done with the reason I was a little late for our initial call, so I apologize, was because I'm teaching this class called Grid AI certification. And it's the agent investor certification. Okay. And it essentially helps agents understand how to be a 360 agent, meaning like know all the options that are available to a consumer today that most agents are not taught. So for example, let's look at the other thing that's happened. What has happened, David, over the last 5, 6, 7 years with interest rates? Where have they been?
They've been ridiculously low for way too long.
They've been really low, right? And by the way, David, if you have a 2.5% or 3% interest rate, and now, you know, you look at that interest rate and you're like, okay, well, if I sell this, I'm buying into a 7% interest rate. What happens? You'll probably say to yourself, what?
Do I want to do that?
Do I want to do that? Do I want to like?
There's the value in that.
There's a value in that, in that interest rate is that interest rate is valuable.
Yes, it
right?
is.
So what are some of the key things that will play on that interest rate that are valuable to the consumer? Well, VA assumable loans, right? You better learn that game.
Heck yeah. That's been a big topic of conversation lately about that. And because what happens with that is not just the assumable, where's the bridge loan come from?
That's right. That's right. FHA, right? How are you going to assume that? Okay.
Well, you're right, because there is no lever for that at the moment. Just like there was no lever for short sales, there was no lever to process foreclosures back and then, right? They're going to have to be relationships that develop to go, how do we get this done? Because the market's going to dictate it, because those loans have value.
Sure. And then you look at the subject to, right? I'm not sure if you're familiar with like the subject to concept.
Not only, so I'll tell you, right? So this book,
Oh yeah.
so if you go to page 368, there's a gentleman in there named Don DeRosa, and I'm actually bringing him to the region on December 8th to come talk to us about subject to, because that's his specialty as well. So I hope to see the room for that.
So we're about to buy, like I bought my first one, was never an expert. I always had friends of mine that were really good at it, tell me about it. Last year I bought one and I was like, oh, wow, that was pretty good. Cool. That worked out well, right?
Yep.
We've got another one under contract right now, which it's a 2% interest rate. So think about that, right?
Wow.
2% interest rate. And I'm like, okay, agents got to learn this game. They need to know this, right? If they want to go in the battle, it's like understanding all the tools that are available to you. We're about to ratify, hopefully, knock on wood, it's taking a little bit longer, but a $1.1 million deal, which is a lease option, right? Why would somebody do a $1.1 million deal with a $150,000 non-refundable deposit lease option deal? Well, the husband and wife are experiencing pain. It's a divorce situation, right? They found the perfect house. They can't get her qualified right now. She needs 6 months of alimony payments in order to qualify for that loan, but they want that house. So let's do and the investor that's selling that asset, he wants that property off the books. So I'm like, hey, how would you like a $150,000 non-refundable deposit, right? Would you willing to carry this for 6-7 months? The answer is yes. So we're going to have to get creative as agents in order to adjust to this marketplace. And the agent that can adjust the quickest survives. And the agent that can't adjust quickly dies.
No doubt.
And that's just how it is. That's just it.
That goes really into it, right? That's the professional realtor who's a business owner, adjusting, adapting, and growing.
Sure.
And those that are hobbyists, they got their license because it's easy money, and they're all going to go by the wayside.
Yeah.
Right? That's why those of us that were around then, that are around now, because we adapted, we shifted, we changed, and we learned, we educated. Yeah. And that's essentially what we're talking about now. It's a challenging market. You've got to leverage what's at your disposal. And that's what you're talking about. Yeah. Use the tools, get into business with professionals, use leverage in all the vehicles you have, right? Knowing the market, partnering with financial institutions, understanding the lending process, getting creative in the gray, and giving options to the consumer because you ask the right questions.
Yeah, David, going back to the basics of you've got a database, making sure that your marketing is matching the reality of the market, specifically educating your database about how they can win in a shifting market, showing them that you have the tools and the solutions and the knowledge and the strategy to win in any environment. And they will gravitate to those that have solutions, to those that are the most confident. And so get loud, as loud as possible with your clients on what's happening in the marketplace.
Yeah. Well, listen, I really appreciate your time. And I hope those that are listening, especially the new agents that have joined us over the last couple of years, heed what you're talking about, right? You don't have to have an incredible, impressive sales track record. You got to have drive, you got to have motivation, and you got to have the understanding that people have done this before me, people will do this after me. And I got to know where to go to get the right information. And those people are just like Rob.
Yeah, David, can I want to add this in here because sometimes a newer agent, I think that there is an advantage for a new agent. Okay. And I do, especially the one that is willing to flow to where the energy is. Okay. And here's the advantage. They don't have big business expenses at this point. They're nimble. right? They're nimble, right? When you run a larger organization like the one we are, or even like what Gary's got to run, like to affect change is sometimes harder because the organization is larger, right? And
Yep.
can you change fast enough, right? In 2007, 8, 9, I was very nimble. And so I was like, okay, well, it was hard to break in the REO business, because a lot of those relationships had been established by established agents that, got in early, right? But the short sale business existed. And so I became a short sale expert overnight. I was a short sale expert, right? And I read, what did that mean? I meant I was one chapter ahead, right? I don't know if you've ever watched the book watched the movie Catch Me If You Can. And
Oh, sure.
Okay, and the guy was like, how did you teach that class? And he's like, I was just one chapter ahead, right? Well, that's how I felt with the short sale business. I would say, I'd read on like, what's a short sale? And then I'd create a video on like what a short sale was. And I literally created a blog of information that drove consumers to me. And eventually they just saw me as the expert. And I was the expert. By the end of it, I had become the expert. So you could probably go look at some of those old Baby Rob short sale videos, right? On like bad camera and everything. But that's what we did, right?
Absolutely. Well, listen, Rob, I really appreciate you. Why don't you just kind of give everybody a rundown? You mentioned your AI certification program,
Sure.
And we'll add this to the video for the end of it. But why don't you just kind of tell everybody, if they want to learn a little bit more about you or the different organizations that you're kind of heading, why don't you just kind of tell everybody where they can find that?
I'd say the best place is to go to Grid Investor, right? Gridinvestor.com. And that is our network of 20,000 agents and investors and real estate entrepreneurs around the country. And that is growing every single day, right? Then from there, there's a subsection specifically for agents called Grid AI Certification. If you go to gridaicertification.com, which takes agents on a 7-week journey of understanding the language and the game of real estate investing so that they can complete their Jedi training. That's what I say, right? Up until this time, the brokerage has taught you one side, one piece of the training, and now you need to complete the other side of your training to become a Jedi Knight. And so Grid AI certification.
Gotta go face Vader a second time.
Yeah, man, go do it. And we're really incredibly proud of it because we just launched our second class through that, and the feedback's been incredible. So gridaicertification.com.
All right. Well, everybody go check it out. If you have a chance, go see Rob whenever he's speaking or talking around the area. He's an incredible source of knowledge and resources. And Rob, I appreciate you for joining us on Entrepreneurial Impact today.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it.
Awesome.